Let me ask you, is there anyone here that's had trouble getting a doctor or proper medical services? Okay, that's like 3/4 of the people. That's great. Not so great. Sarcasm. And is anyone worried that if the government declared an emergency, they could actually seize your house and your property? Anybody worried about that? And some don't even care. Okay, that's good. But when they come knocking on your door, that's when everything changes. Well, folks, you're in the right place, and before the night is over, we want you to learn new information and actually ask questions. That's what this is about tonight. It's a town hall, the old-fashioned style. To give perspective and gratitude for all of you who came out tonight, I want to share something back from the 40s, when the world was in turbulence amidst a world war, a chaotic time, not too dissimilar from the past few years that we've gone through. It's from a war correspondent that was married to, of all people, Ernest Hemingway for a few years. Her name is Martha Gellhorn. Once married to Ernest Hemingway, Martha Ellis Gellhorn was an American novelist, travel writer, and daring journalist who is considered one of the great war correspondents of the 20th century. Gellhorn reported on virtually every major world conflict that took place during her 60-year career. Now you're saying, what he's talking about? Here's what she said, and this is really important, and this goes to all of you here. People often say with pride, I'm not interested in politics. They may as well say, I'm not interested in my standard of living, my health, my job, my rights, my freedoms, my future, or any future. If we mean to keep any control over our worlds and our lives, we must be interested in politics. And I know that kind of rubs people the wrong way, but that's where we are today. As these bills are coming out, being passed left, right, and center, without the acquiescence or without the approval of the public, they're just happening. So thank you for being here and wanting to hear more. So we're here as an extension of a group of residents that felt the need to inform the public of what is going on right in front of us, what our government is doing, shaping, forming, forcing, creating, jeopardizing, inflicting, and I can go on. It's surrounding us in so many ways. We get a bit of angst going on inside of us, that anxiety that you sometimes go, oh shit, where are we? What's going on? Tonight, we're honored to have some exceptional speakers who will speak to us. We will address these points and more. They'll address specific bills like 21, 31, 36. Sorry, wrong game. They're bills that most people haven't even heard of and have no idea what the impact is, but it impacts all of us. You'll hear about that in detail from our guest speakers. I'd like to start tonight with welcoming and introducing our veteran of town hall meetings. I think I've seen him every single one. We're so honored to have Dr. Stephen Malthouse, who is a BC physician. He is also one of the founders of the Canada Health Alliance, and who is a current president of the Canadian Integrative Medical Association. He has practiced medicine over 40 years in rural, urban, emergency room, palliative care, and family practice settings, as well as being involved in overseas research into childhood illnesses. Stephen will speak on the Health Professional Occupations Act. You guys got that? The acronym is HPOA, or better known as Bill 36. And also the Emergency Preparedness Act, Bill 31, which I'm sure hardly anybody's even heard about. So please welcome Dr. Stephen Malthouse to the stage.
So there are a lot of bills here, and they all go by numbers, so I don't know if you can keep this straight enough. You almost have to be a mathematician in British Columbia to see and keep track of all these bills as they go past you, because there have been so many that have been passed in the last little while. In November, they passed Bill 31, which I'm going to speak about, which is to do with emergencies. But they also, in that same month, they passed a Bill 44, 46, and 47, which are to do with building high rises next to bus stops and building a sixplex just down the street from you without you having any control of that. In other words, the province taking away a lot of the municipality's ability to control how things are developed in your neighborhood and the infrastructures that are required to go with that. So they're passing these bills like crazy. It's like they're in a race for some reason. And it could be a race to maybe to get out of office, I hope so. But I'm going to take you through a few of these. And this is, so if you have some training in arithmetic and mathematics, you'll be in good shape for tonight. Let's see. Oh, here we go. I think. Hang on. All right. Well, I'm talking about Bill 36, or the Health Professions and Occupations Act, HPOA. Now, what this is about, well, many of you already know that there's more than 1 million people in British Columbia who cannot find themselves a family doctor. And you can see that there's all sorts of things happening here. We've had closures of hospitals and wards have closed. People have had to go down south to get cancer care because we don't have adequate facilities or staffing that's required to man those facilities. And so we're actually in pretty dire straits here. But you know, our politicians think we're doing just fine. At least the ones that are in office do. But those of us that are in healthcare, we know that this is a disaster, that they are actually, I don't know if we can say they, but the system is being destroyed. And I think our government is definitely contributing to it through bills such as this Bill 36. 60% of British Columbians don't feel that they can find a family doctor when they need one. And the thought is, even this is from the Times columnist down in Victoria, so you can see even in mainstream media they're recognizing that we have this problem. This is not just alternative media anymore. This is coming out in the everyday press that the general public is reading. So Bill 36, the Health Professions and Occupations Act. Now this bill was passed in November 2022. All right, so it's been in there for a while. It is an act, so it's not a bill anymore, but it will not be actually brought into I would say enacted until probably June next month, because there are so many sort of undefined clauses in this that they have to fill them in before they can actually enact it. For example, what is misinformation? Nobody seems to know what that is, and certainly the College of Physicians and Surgeons hasn't got an idea. But what they're going to do is they're going to take 15 colleges, 15 self-regulating colleges, and that could be optometrists, dentists, chiropractors, medical doctors, nurses, naturopaths. Those 15 colleges will be amalgamated into 6. And of course the key words here are modernizing, streamlining, clarifying, that sort of thing. You know, the typical political speak, which is designed to make you say, oh, that makes complete sense to me. Now, the advisory boards, I'll talk a little bit from the doctor's perspective, because we have an advisory board of which 50% are elected by other physicians, you know, depending on their district. So that means at least those 50% of the people on the advisory board for the college, they have some experience about medicine. But what's going to happen with this new bill or act is that 100% of them will be, these advisors will be nominated or put into place by the government. So that means they may not have the experience that we would hope to have for colleges that are supposed to be monitoring their register, doctors, nurses, etc. So all BC practitioners will now have to follow health guidelines presented by the government. In other words, if I want to do something different for you because you're an individual, I won't be able to do that without being fined or potentially imprisoned. And I'll show you that in a minute. But what it means is that there will be no further individualizing of healthcare. It'll be very much restricted. Now, when we say there may not be, it means it's possible we could have things as usual. But this act gives the government powers to change things. And that, I think, is where the danger lies. They have the power to do it, but will they do it? We don't know yet, because we haven't got any examples of how they're going to wield this. I mentioned before terms such as false and misleading. We don't know what those mean, but those will be defined later behind closed doors by the government. And you may have heard in the last 4 years, I think I'm one of the guilty ones of presenting misleading information to the public, but now potentially we can be jailed. And this is what the cost would be. If I was an incorporated doctor, and most of the doctors in British Columbia are incorporated, you know, they have companies, corporations, They could be fined up to $500,000 and put into prison for 2 years for presenting misleading information. So that means all you will get will be the guidelines. Whatever the guidelines are for you, for your condition, your diagnosis, that's what will be applied. You won't get anything which will be tailored to the patient sitting in front of the doctor. They can seize your records under this act. And in fact, what they can do is they can come to the doctor's office and put a lock on the door. And they can do that just from having an anonymous complaint. So if I was standing in the hallway and I wasn't wearing a mask, somebody could complain. Or the relative of someone could complain. And then they could come and lock the door of my office and stop me from practicing while they're investigating. And I would never know who it was that made the complaint. Of course, the Minister of Health, Adrian Dix, he says this is not true, but then in the same sentence he went on to define who could take your charts. And they could be spread to anybody who the government felt was essential in deciding whether it was necessary or not, and how they were going to punish the person who contravened the law. As I mentioned before, an anonymous complaint will be enough to close a doctor's office. And here's a big one. Anybody that refuses, now I'm just not talking about doctors, I'm talking about all healthcare practitioners, your naturopath, your chiropractor, and all others that are in these 15 colleges. If they actually refuse, they could lose their license. So this would mean that you might have to take a mandated vaccine or other type of therapy or pill or drug if the government thought that that was necessary to keep your patients safe. And we know how that's gone in the last 4 years. Now, this is another one which kind of reaches outside of Canada. And there have been some lawyers who have said that they don't think this act was written in our country, certainly not in our province. That means there's some external influences which are starting to have an agenda which they're reaching into our province to make us follow it. And this is an example of this. The Cabinet and the Minister of Health can adopt as law in BC any regulations, codes, standards, or rules enacted in forest jurisdictions or international bodies. So that means it could be some kind of a rule that's down in the United States or is in Europe, in Switzerland, who knows. It could be the WHO. And without any oversight, our government could adopt that and enforce it. There's a good example. And we all know the WHO, the pandemic treaty is coming up soon, and the international health regulations amendments are coming up soon. This is very important as how they're going to try to reach in and control our health care. And we've already seen some evidence of potentially foreign meddling with affairs in our politics. So what does the HPO really mean? It means the government can now fully control all your healthcare providers, what they can say to you and how they can treat you. It means your private health records can be seized by the government at any time. The government can adopt foreign rules and regulations without oversight. The HPOA, the Health Professions and Occupations Act, will affect your family's access to doctors, nurses, chiropractors, naturopaths, dentists, optometrists, physiotherapists, and many more healthcare practitioners. And hospital departments will continue to close and treatments will be delayed. So this is maybe what you feel like now, that you either have got a, you feel like screaming or you've got a terrible migraine just from hearing this, but that's nothing. We've got some more laws that they've passed, even more recently. That was passed in November 2022. This is the ones that are coming up were passed in 2023. And people didn't even see them as they went past the legislature. They passed new legislation aimed for and mitigating emergencies. Now, does anybody here like roller coasters? No, I don't either. Oh, there's somebody, some brave soul. They're too terrifying. I don't like to go to amusement parks. I think I go on the ones like, we went on one with my wife called the parachute. It just goes around, it's very gentle, And we were screaming, get us out of here, get us out of here. It was late at night, they thought, oh, we'll give these guys an extra long ride. We get terrified pretty easily. But this roller coaster, these are the people, they're upside down in this roller coaster. But, roller coasters are a lot like politics these days. So this is kind of what it's like before the last election, right? Really enthusiastic. Look at this, wonderful. And this is what it's like after the last election. Kind of where we are now. Although I think maybe we're getting to this point where this is kind of awaiting the next election. Where there's a profound sense of illness, nausea, and I don't know if I can bear another one. Whoa, whoa, wow, that went pretty fast. Did you catch that? Well, that's how fast that bill was brought in. But I think if we go back, maybe we can get some help with that. I don't know whether I can do it from here. I can try, perhaps. Let's see. This is kind of, you can see if I was taller, if I was as tall as Frank, I'd be in perfect position to do this, right? Okay, let's just see if we can get down. Whoa, it's going to have to go fast here. So this is like a review for you. We'll hope we'll stop, and we don't get to that one where it zips through everything again. You want me to stop at that one? If you didn't have a migraine before, now you probably got a migraine. I think we're getting close. Bill 31, the Emergency and Disaster Management Act. Now, we had an act before to deal with emergencies, but we needed to upgrade it, so to speak. And this one actually went back to about 2015, where there was a meeting in Japan, and they adopted a lot of the things that they thought were worthwhile. So it was back in 2015. Maybe you recognize this phrase, build back better, right? Anyway, this is what they thought they would do, and it was adopted by the Third UN. So this is kind of the roots of this new Disaster Management Act. And the previous one had quite a bit in it, but they wanted to upgrade it. So they added in other causes for disasters or emergencies: transmissible diseases, environmental toxins, security threats, terrorist activities. Those are some of them. Now, where do those come from? I think many of them seem to be manufactured. Certainly transmissible diseases. I don't know if you guys are ready to run from the bird flu yet. But I see that as a means of actually attacking our food supply. But environmental toxins, well, where are those coming from? Anyway, the question is why? Now, I mentioned these words: streamline, modernize, clarify. These are keys that you're being hoodwinked when you start to see those at the beginning of an act. And Bill 31, they also added climate change. And now that's really significant. The other thing they added was the fact that there were penalties for non-compliance. So if you interfere with the rollout of this act, if there was a so-called emergency, then you actually could be punished. Now, it doesn't take much for them to declare an emergency. Even your local authority can do that. So someone in Nanaimo could declare an emergency as long as they thought that they were satisfied that an emergency was present. If they had made reasonable efforts to get people's opinion, the word here is reasonable. All right? So you can see the language here allows a lot of leeway for interpretation. Now, from the provincial perspective, is the minister is satisfied. Now, that's a good question. What does it take to satisfy a minister? And I'm not allowed to go there. My wife told me I wasn't supposed to say any jokes that were really off color, particularly since I don't know the minister personally. But the other one, if there was an initiative, or if there's even the thought that there may be a significant risk maybe there that could give rise. So again, this is a lot is available for interpretation to the minister before they can declare an emergency. Essentially, the minister has to be satisfied, and then they can do whatever they like. General power to do all things necessary. Some of the restrictions you will see would be restrictions on travel to and from an area, restrictions on a business, if you had a business in the area, or if you were going to have an event. An event like this, you wouldn't be able to take place if we were being threatened by, a tsunami on the other side of the island, perhaps. Land and property can be altered and destroyed. Now, this is really important. This is where they can come and take your crop, your trees, your house. They can take just about everything. I don't think they can quite take your children, but nevertheless. So what we have here is they can appropriate, use, and control any of your personal property. They can use and control the use of any land, authorize entry into your property without warrant, any structure on your land. They can prohibit the entry into any structure onto any land by any person. So that would mean if you tried to get back to your house, they could stop you from going there or to your business. And they can authorize or require the alteration, removal, or demolition of trees, crops, structures, or landscapes. Now, this is very important for farmers, too. right? Because farmers, they come in and take all their crop, right? They could take all their grain, they could do whatever they want. So again, there's so many mays in this. There's more than 200 mays, M-A-Y, as in might, in this act, which leaves so much room for interpretation. Now, what happens if you don't obey? If you don't obey, then this is something new. Then there can be huge penalties. If you're an individual who commits an offense, then you can be imprisoned up to 1 year, which would mean you interfere with the carrying out of this act. So if they send someone to your property and you interfere with them in some way, you don't let them on, whatever, you can actually be fined up to $100,000 and spend 1 year in prison. Now, if you're a corporation, a company, you could be liable for a fine of up to $1 million. And if you were an officer, director, employee, or agent of the corporation who directed, authorized, permitted, participated in, or even acquiesced in an offense, you could actually be put in prison for a year and fined up to $300,000. These are very heavy fines, right? And you may know in the case of what's happened with forest fires in the last year, some people actually saved their property. They were told not to go in there, and the fire department was not going to do anything. They were just standing back, the firefighters, and the people went in and actually saved their land and property.
1 minute.
Okay, thank you. But what Bill 31 could really mean? An arbitrary decision by a politician in the form of declaring an emergency will allow the government to take what it wants from you and your family. And if you resist in any way, you will be punished. Essentially, that's it. So it could mean something like this, that you don't have a home and you are alone. But this is what's going to save us. Act. Action changes things. And that's why we're here today, I think, is to learn how we've got to learn the problems first, and then we have to have some solutions. So we're going to hopefully talk about different things we can do to get rid of these. I think one of the most important things is you're going to have to look among your candidates in your riding and choose the best one and vote for that person and get people to get out and vote. And you're going to have to put the feet of the candidate to the fire, right? And ask them, where do they stand on these different issues that are so important to your community? And that's what we have to do. So I think what we heard earlier about a quote that, you cannot ignore politics. Not anymore. Not anymore. I don't think our province would survive another 4 years with the current government. We need to change it. And we need to get real champions in there. And we need to keep this in mind too, which is, again, the reason we come together, is the people don't know their true power. That's us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Malthouse. Wasn't that incredible, all the stuff we don't know? And my God, look at those penalties. That's against you and I and all of us here. We're all exposed to that possible persecution by our government. What's happening here? You've got to ask that question. Well, when talking about action, Dr. Malthouse took it upon himself to design and put together these wonderful cards to start fighting back. They're simple cards which are basically saying, we don't agree with what's going on with the health system. We need change happening. They'll be passed around to you over the next minute or so. If you can fill these out, it takes very little. This is how many we have right now to turn in. That's just from a couple of doctor offices. Pretty amazing, isn't it? Let's do better. Let's fill these in today. We can't afford any longer. We have to have them back tonight, so don't take them home. Fill them out tonight. Turn them back in. I'm sorry?
Yeah, I just want to say about those cards is what the cards really are designed to turn you into activists. Because when we hand them out, we've already sent 5,000 of them, more than 5,000 down to the legislature last November. And it's unlikely some of the politicians are going to change their minds really. But we have to actually take a step toward becoming activists ourselves. So this is the first step. Just putting your name on it, putting your email on it, means that you're kind of getting off the couch. And then it's one step, and then you can take another. To create that sort of inertia, the momentum of going forward, become activists. And that's how we feel we're going to bring change. So just the act of
Oh,
I helped design those cards, but it was really a team that did that for BC Rising. Yeah.
that's awesome. So raise your hand if you like one of these cards if you don't have one already. Yep. Okay. The next thing is we're going to pass around some 3x5 cards. Raise your hands to put questions on there that you want to have for our speakers. And we'll be collecting those in just another minute or two as well. This way we'll have the questions on cards. It's nice and clear, and we will utilize those when we're done with all the presenters tonight. So there's a whole back